In today's episode, we're fixing everything that literally set our V8 on fire. Welcome back to Project Jaaaag.
Our new series, Project Jaaaag, has seen us buy two Jaguars of differing conditions. Richard has bought back what we thought was a fairly sweet XJR from back in his Top Gear days, and I have bought a shabby old XKR from Japan. With the smallest cog restoring Richard's XJ and Jaguar specialists Swallows Racing restoring the XK, the quest to see who will have the sweetest Jag is underway.
So, what are we fixing today? Well, the first cause of the fire was just the sheer amount of engine oil leaking onto the manifolds. That was because of gasket failure, specifically the rocker cover gaskets on both sides. They were all gummy and were essentially doing nothing, and oil was pissing down onto the exhaust, creating all of that smoke. Also, down at the front, there's been some sort of failure as well. There's a whole load of nasty, oily gunk down the front there. The fire was also aided by a couple of plastic connectors that were resting on the manifolds on either side. That just led to more and more smoke and that big chimney coming out of the bonnet. Then there's the reason that the car created so little power, roughly 90 horsepower down. That was down to boost leaks. So we had 1, 2, 3 gaskets that were doing pretty much nothing, meaning that boost was just exiting into the surroundings instead of going into the engine. So today's jobs are going to be fixing all of that, but we are going to start with the timing chain. The timing chain tensioners are a big failure point on these V8s. So we're going to do that first, followed by all the gaskets under the sun to seal the engine properly. And then we're going to end with our first power mod of this series, a smaller supercharger pulley, as let's face it, everyone prefers it smaller. It's really cool that a bunch of manufacturers have phoned in and wanted to help out supply parts for our build. I'd like to say a massive thank you to S&G Barrett, who supplied us with all of these fresh parts that will be going on the XKR in the coming episodes. A specific one for today is this gasket. This is what caused the major boost leak from the supercharger. Thank you, S&G Barrett. So John, first things first, timing chain. I've read the forums. Why do the tensioners fail so often?
It's because they're in the environment of where it gets hot and cold and they just end up cracking because they're plastic coated. Okay. It's more the plastic cracks and falls off the guides and then basically running the chain straight against the metal of the guide, which obviously isn't any good for the engine. Putting metal filings around the oil waste, should we say.
I've come up against that in my Mondeo. So
are
we replacing them with something different? Is there
they are a modified part. The newer ones don't fail as bad as the older ones. I've never seen new ones fail in the time on Jag, but the earlier ones are quite common, should we say.
Okay, well they sound good. Let's get them in.
Yep.
So John, we're just taking off these guides, and this is the main problem. What's happened here?
Basically, as you can see, you've got your cracks forming. Well, this one's actually opened up and starting to basically come apart. You flip them over and you can see all the hairline cracks where they're all coming through. So eventually the plastic casing will fall off the metal insert in behind there and start causing more damage to your engine.
And that's because these are plastic and that's just the chain kind of slapping against them?
Yeah, the chain running against it.
Okay, so these are the old ones that break. What are the new ones we're putting on?
And the new ones, as you can see, is a lot more different structure, different design, and a lot more robust, which don't cause any issues at the moment.
So it is still plastic,
it's still
but just
plastic,
less of it?
Yeah, and less of it.
Okay. We're nearly done with the timing chain assembly now. It's looking really nice and fresh. One thing I did notice though, in between some heat shielding and the manifold, I found one of the clips. That is melty, fiery XKR dyno run right there. John, that's everything back in place now. It looks lovely. That
Yep.
seemed surprisingly easy.
Yeah, purely because it's more of a Japanese car, you've got no corrosion.
So a UK car, all of these little bolts should
they
be-
corrode up, you get surface corrosion on them. When you put the sockets on them, they just spin.
And you were introduced to me as the master mechanic here. Can you, I've always heard that phrase, master mechanic. What does that actually mean?
A good all-rounder. Basically, I can put my hands to anything from electrical to servicing to mechanical work like what we've just done here. And when it gets above the service advisor's information, should we say, of understanding the system, having to relay it to customers as well.
Basically, you're the man.
I am, I'm afraid.
And my nerd brain sees master and thinks, right, well, there must be a level above that, which is grandmaster. Does that exist?
No,
grandmaster mechanic?
not on the Jaguars at the moment, not even in the dealer networks. So,
Well, I think you're a grandmaster. That job was absolutely immaculate.
why, thank you.
We learned from a Car Vertical report in our last video here that our XKR originated in the USA, hence why it is left-hand drive. It then made its way to Japan and then finally got all the way back to the UK. It was so cool uncovering that story. We still think potentially the car was owned by a member of the military, and Car Vertical is back sponsoring today's video. If you are buying a second-hand car, like that one there, it definitely pays to take a plunge into the car's history so you know exactly what you're buying. By using Car Vertical, you'll get a full comprehensive report that uses information from all over the globe and will tell you whether the car's ever been in an accident, if it's ever been stolen, if it has outstanding finance, or if the mileage number seems a bit odd. Let's say you fancy a sports coupe, but a Jag is a bit too old man, a bit too British. The obvious choice is a Porsche 911. And let's say you come across a cheap GT3. Who wouldn't want a cheap GT3? You put its reg into Car Vertical and you get a report that looks a bit like this. Up top, the mileage, theft and finance sections are all green ticks. No bother there at all. But there is an amber warning in the accident section. We'll get to that in a bit. You can scroll down and go through a whole load of data. It says the car was manufactured in January 2014. It has had a few registration changes, ending in 2019 with Porca. Classy. There's the mileage graph, looking nice and normal. But then you get to the accident section and you can see the car was written off in 2018. Then scroll down to the picture section and you can see exactly what has happened. The car looks okay from this initial angle, but swivel round and nope. The entire driver's side, front wheel and suspension has been ripped clean off. That is a bad one. It has been in a big shunt, but considering the report says it passed its MOT in 2022, this car has clearly been mended and put back on the road. A lot of you out there wouldn't want to go anywhere near a car that's had that big an accident, no matter how good the mend is. So the best thing is to use Car Vertical, and you will get 10% off when you use our link in the description. You can use it to check your own car too. Maybe your car has got as cool a story as our XKR. Again, thank you to Car Vertical for sponsoring today's video. The next job was removing the Jaag's supercharger, followed by pressing out the stock pulley. With a bit of hydraulic grunt, it popped off just nice. So the supercharger is now out, getting cleaned, ready for its new pulley. And with that removed, we can really see the expanse of the full engine bay. And yeah, there's been a few findings from when we first looked at the car. There's the remnants of a rodent nest on the right hand side there. When we first looked in the airbox before changing the filter, there was definitely something living in there at some point. And then right underneath the supercharger down here in the V of the engine, I don't know whether that's a nest or whether Mother Nature has just dumped whatever it wants in there. But first things first, let's give that a clean.
After Henry Hoover had done his job, we took both intakes off to give us plenty space to replace the all-important rocker cover gaskets to seal our engine back up again, followed by some fresh coil packs from SNG to make sure the V8 is firing at its best. And to finish off, a fresh set of billet covers from Swallows themselves. These things look pretty epic. It was at this stage that we came across another weak point of this V8 engine.
John, something else I've read on the forums is about these two coolant pipes here. What's the situation with these?
Basically they're the valley pipes. They sit on top of the V underneath the supercharger, so they're in quite a hot spot and there's no airflow over them as such, and they are prone for failing. Okay. Obviously yours haven't failed at this point of time, but since we've done all the work with the supercharger off to obviously do the inlet manifold gaskets, as a matter of caution, we recommend to replace them as we're in there. Yeah. So they do fail and they do make a mess when they fail as well. So.
Yes, I imagine it's a disaster because the whole V will fill up and then what, supercharger and intakes off to get to them.
Yeah, obviously everything we've taken off now to do the repair of the intake.
Yeah.
Manifold gaskets there obviously would have to come off again for us to be able to replace for the sake of a £15–20 pipe.
Cool, and so they're the new ones there?
They're the new ones there that will go in.
From SNG Barrett, again, thank you, SNG Barrett. You guys may have noticed while we've been working on the XKR, there's a very special piece of kit just next door to it. Jag never made an X-Type R because it was based on the Mondeo. Really, there just wasn't really the architecture to do anything. This is what you'd hope it would have looked like, but it's not a road car at all. This is an SC V8 X-Type. Now, you could be very much forgiven for not knowing what that is, because SC V8 was a racing series back in 2003 that never made it. This was the concept car for the series, but it simply never went anywhere. It was essentially going to be Britain and Europe's attempt at Aussie V8 racing cars, and this is what they produced. This underneath is not a Jag at all. It's a complete space frame chassis that simply had a body put on top. This started as a Peugeot, and then someone brought it to the UK, put this Jag body on it, and it looks sick. It's an incredibly unique piece of kit, but don't worry, we're not going to launch a gearbox through the windscreen of this X-Type. We've been having a bit of a debate. There's this thing in the middle of the V, which I can only describe as, well, it's like a sort of dead squirrel has been put in a microwavable bag. John, this, what is it?
It's there purely for noise, helping to keep the pipes in their location.
Do we need it?
It's personal preference. I've had superchargers off the cars before, and it's 50-50 to whether or not it's still there. It is your own personal preference, really. So normally if it's there, we refit it, but it's up to you what you do.
Is it going to affect those coolant pipes?
Like I've said, I've seen them where they have been missing and they've had no issues with the coolant pipes. So I would personally go down, it's your own personal preference of if it stays there or not.
Microwaved dead squirrel removed, we set about swapping in the new coolant pipes along with some more fresh gaskets before the intakes and supercharger were lowered back into place. It was then time for our first engine mod, the smaller supercharger pulley.
So John, you were saying this is probably the root of the boost leak.
Yes.
What part of the engine is this and why was it leaking?
This is basically the supercharger outlet, bolts on top of the supercharger.
Okay, so it goes like that.
So, yep, so after the superchargers compress the air, it then comes up through and then puts it into each inlet manifold.
Okay.
And what happens with these is obviously the ducts as such just suck in on themselves. This is the early design one where you've got no lip around the edge. As the modified ones have actually got a lip, and the plates are modified to hold the seals in, so they don't suck in and pull out of there. So
Okay, so basically the old design, this like
Yeah.
collapses in basically.
collapse, sucks in, and then it pulls itself out of its
So
fixing.
boost is just escaping out
Yeah.
there. With this new one from SNG, that won't happen.
That won't happen anymore.
Okay, cool, let's get it in. Tom, we've gone with your smaller pulley for the Supercharger. What's the basic engineering behind that decision?
Yeah, so we're going to do 2 upgrades. So we've gone with a smaller top pulley.
Okay.
So the original one's a 3-inch. We reduced that by 6%. Now, the 4 litre and 4.2s are slightly different from factory. The main difference, obviously, is the lower pulley as well. So the 4.2 from factory had a slightly larger bottom pulley. The best combination that we have found is going with the 4.2 size lower pulley on a 4 litre with the reduced upper pulley. The balance is we have to stay within a certain RPM with the Eaton Supercharger. If we go out of that RPM, we then start generating heat.
Okay, so essentially going from medium top, medium bottom to big bottom, small top.
Yeah, exactly that.
And that means the Supercharger spins faster,
Exactly.
more boost.
Exactly that. So the standard car will be about 11.5 PSI, something along those lines. That's the 4 litre. We're going to be in the region of 14, 14.5, something like that.
Okay, so the number in my head is 450
Yeah.
horsepower. With, I mean, just doing the simple maths, remember Dan telling me how much horsepower the manual gearbox will release?
Yeah.
I've had some rough chats about how much horsepower this is going to release.
Yeah.
Is 450, is that going to be achievable?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, we regularly get them to that, and we have gone further than that. The balance is when you start getting the supercharger RPM too high, you get out of their efficiency range, so you start generating heat, and then you have to reduce ignition time. And so 450 is a really good, strong figure that you'll just run after run on the dyno and not lose that power.
Okay, I'm very excited, and I'm hoping even just now, having done all the gaskets on it, it's a nice sealed 4 litre V8 again. There shouldn't be a drip off it now.
Yeah, exactly.
So another day comes to a close with the XKR, and this build has very recently gained some proper venom behind it. You guys may or may not know that I used to write for Car Throttle, and back then Alex Kirsten was the editor-in-chief. You guys may know him as Auto Alex on YouTube. He has very recently bought an XJR6 Jag, the straight 6 supercharged one. I think his is a 1996. He's put it on a dyno and it's created more power than this car did. I think he put out 309 versus the 288 of this. That is not on. In fact, he phoned me up and made a bit of an arse of me, really. So I cannot wait to do as good a job as possible with this Jag, and not only make it as nice, if not better than Richard's XJR, but also to smash Alex's car. So I couldn't have much more motivation to nail this build. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. I've been Mike, and don't forget to subscribe to DRIVETRIBE. I'll see you on the next episode of Project Jag.